Welcome back to Light Beyond the Ashes, the podcast where science meets spirituality and awakening becomes embodied. I'm your host, Amber Humphrey. Today, we're diving into one of the most revolutionary conversations of our time, communication beyond words. My guest, Eileen Himel, founder of Enphase in Tune with Autism, is reshaping how we understand autistic expression, intelligence, and divine connection. Through total communication, from letterboards and AAC devices to the energetic language of telepathy, Eileen shows us that non-speaking autistics aren't limited, they're luminous. They're here to awaken humanity to deeper ways of listening. Eileen once served as the letterboard coach for Houston Asher, the autistic young man behind the telepathy tapes. But through their work, he became her teacher, revealing the telepathic and divine intelligence within us all. This episode will open your heart and remind you that when we truly listen and presume competence, we can hear the soul speak. Welcome to the Light Beyond the Ashes podcast, the podcast where no topic is too taboo, too off limits, too weird, or too sacred to explore. Here we meet souls from all walks of life who've risen from the fire, who found their voice, their truth, and their light on the other side of trauma, awakening, and transformation. We'll dive into everything from nervous system regulation to telepathic communication to spiritual downloads that don't fit into any traditional box. And that's exactly the point. I'm your host, Amber Humphrey, a pediatric occupational therapist, intuitive healer, Reiki practitioner, and now podcast host, walking this path right alongside you. I'm so honored you're here, and I cannot wait for you to meet today's guest. So, everybody, welcome Miss Eileen. Eileen, please introduce yourself to the Light Beyond the Ashes community and share why you decided to meet with me today and talk about your experiences with the non-speaking autistic community.
That was so beautiful, so gorgeous. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Eileen Himel, and I am a master's in mental health counseling, and I've been working with the non-speaking autism community for a very long time. I have a younger brother he's not autistic, but at the time he kind of just like fit in that box. And I worked at his schools whenever I was like in high school and college. And so I was like always exposed to autism, right? And while I was getting my master's, I worked in an ABA clinic and I loved it. Like from the beginning, I just felt a spark with autism. Like I knew there was like something deep about it. And, at the time I was very conditioned. I had not healed in any type of way. And I was very much in my patterns. So I wouldn't have explained it like that, but I absolutely felt it. Um, so I decided to stay in this work, but for for a while I was like, what do I do? Do I become a BCBA?
Mm-hmm.
Which is, if people don't know, that's like the people who basically manage the ABA therapists and create the plans. And that it just didn't feel right. Like it did not feel right. And so, as destiny would have it, the people who owned the clinic, so they had a little girl, and I was her therapist. And
Love that.
yeah, she started doing this new therapy that was called RPM, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rapid prompting method. And so I was the one to bring her to this therapy within the clinic. And, you know, I didn't know much about it. Nobody was really talking about it. And probably like 8 months into it or something like that, I was watching this therapy, and what I saw was my client, who at the time she was 12 years old. I didn't know that she knew what like a recliner was, because at the time that was like the programs we were doing, like touch recliner, touch table, right? And she was, getting it more or less like 50%. And I saw her grounded in her body and typing out a whole sentence on her own. And I was just like, oh my gosh, what is this? I have to do this. So that was it. Right then and there, I started learning about it. I enrolled in SOMA's like level 1 course, and I went to Texas and I studied there, and I started doing letterboard and seeing autism through the lens of presuming competence in the intellect and training the purposeful movement, training the body to move purposefully. And in regards to letterboard, it's so they can begin to spell and spell out their thoughts, right?
That's so incredible. So then did you know right then and there that your career path had completely changed and you were like, I'm gonna do this now and I'm gonna be helping with spelling?
I did because I was like, this has to be right. The way that I saw that she was sitting, the way that I saw she was regulated, and she was the one typing on her own, like my jaw was on the floor. And I was like, this is the answer, right? Because I knew I didn't want to be a BCBA. Like it just didn't feel right.
So is Enphase in tune with autism helping children to do spelling, or do you do different types of therapy?
So I call it letterboard right now. For me, I don't claim to be an RPM provider or an S2C provider. And I think I'll stick with that because I acknowledge telepathy and these programs don't. Not that they're not amazing because they are. And I've learned a lot from both of their leaders, Soma and Elizabeth Vossler. But yes, so I am doing letterboard training right now, but I also work with parents 101 in like the mental health coaching space.
That's so amazing. I love that so much. And I know that, for me, how I became familiar with letterboarding or spelling and telepathy was I myself had my own spiritual awakening and I had the experience of telepathy and hearing my higher self and hearing spirit. And I think it's a very personal experience that a lot of us are nervous to share. And, we kind of chatted about this before we started was being a therapist in the mainstream healthcare field, even mentioning that you have the ability to have telepathy is taboo, right?
Right.
And then we have the telepathy tapes comes
Yeah.
out last year and changed everybody's lives. And Kai
Mhm.
Dickens and all of the people involved, including Houston and Katie Asher, who we'll be interviewing as well, who you've worked with.
Yes.
So I'd like to kind of talk a little bit about your experience with other spellers and other non-speaking autistics and the role of telepathy and how we are neuroaffirming in our care and we care about total communication. And right now, total communication looks like AAC, augmentative alternative communication. It looks like, sign language and gestures and babbling and all the different types of communication that we have. But what about the telepathy and the letter boards and how it's kind of been left out of the conversation? Tell us a little bit about your experiences with these.
Oh, that was like just such a good like all of that everything you said was so good. And there's so many directions I can go. But do you want to hear about maybe when I first discovered telepathy?
Yeah, sure. What
Yeah.
was your experience like?
So, because I feel like that kind of, my story kind of makes it more real for people and they understand where someone's coming from with it, like how it's not made up, right?
Right.
Um, so I had just started, it was my first year doing practicing as a letterboard practitioner, and I was working at this awesome facility in Atlanta. And that's where I got to meet Houston and learn so much from Houston and other spellers. Um, so when I first started, and the way that it works is you start with what you're doing is you're training their gross motor movement to touch letters on a board in order to spell.
Mhm.
Because for the audience, as I'm sure many of them know, non-speaking autistics are apraxic. So that means that their motor system doesn't work with ease like a neurotypical motor system would.
Right.
So you are basically just laying down the foundation, the neural pathways for purposeful movement in order to point to letters on a board to spell. And so it starts off very simply and it progresses to open communication. But very simply, it would start off as like, and this is just random, okay? But like, we're learning about how to carve furniture today. Let's talk about this table. What piece of furniture are we talking about? We're talking about and so you know that they're gonna spell what is it? Do you know?
The table.
Table. Right. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. So you're prompting them to spell the word table. Okay. So that's the first step. Once they have that, then you move on to something that's called semi open. So it'd be like, okay, we're going to talk about tables, chairs and I don't know, stools, right? And so you're like, all right, choose one of those. Let's say that's semi open. So what I noticed as I was practicing was like, wow, it seems like they choose everything that I'm thinking. Like, that's just so weird, you know? Like, so if I was just thinking stool, it's like they would type stool. And it just seemed like it was happening so often, like it was kind of weirding me out.
Yeah.
Like I'm not touching them, I'm not moving the board. I was very ABA trained at like this very prestigious ABA place. So I was even more so like I'm not touching them. Like I didn't even give prompts that I could have given, right?
Wow.
And so I went talked to my mentor at the time. His name is Austin Moore. He works at Recliff or did. And I was like, "Hey, so this is gonna sound crazy, but like it's so weird. It feels like they just keep typing for semi-open statements and stuff. They just keep typing like exactly what I'm thinking." He's like, "Oh yeah, they probably are." I was like, "What?"
So he already kind of knew. He was a
He knew everyone knew except for me in the place.
wow.
Yeah, everyone knew. So what I'm saying is it wasn't like somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, these kids are telepathic." I was living in the 3D world, literally had no type of spiritual anything, did would have never believed in telepathy. Like I was like very, and I am still like very grounded in that way. And so for me to just come up with that, and for him to respond that way, they already knew. Yeah.
So
So,
so you found out that the children were reading your thoughts.
yes.
And how did that continue to progress and manifest? Did you try to strengthen that muscle? Did you kind of like play with it a little bit? How did
Oh,
that
I mean, at first I was just excited because after that quick little story, I didn't believe him. I was like, "I don't believe you. Like, you're messing with me." And he's like, "No, I'm not." And he was like, he called the front desk girl who was like a family friend over and he was like, are these kids telepathic? And she's like, oh yeah, 100%, right? 100%. And she was like, look, tell me a word. And she was like, whisper it in my ear. Mind you, the person so there's a non-speaking autism person. I won't say his name, but he's completely on the other side of the building. I whisper a word in her ear and then she calls him over and she holds up the board and says, what word was Eileen thinking? And he spells it out. He spells it out. And so I start like jumping up and down. I'm like, this is real. So it was exciting, but at
yeah.
the same time, it was slightly terrifying. It was like, wait, okay, so they can hear my thoughts, like
Yes. And
at the time I
have
yeah.
we been like our thoughts sometimes like, oh, he's dysregulated. I don't know what to do. And you're now aware of what your thoughts are. And you're like, oh God, he can hear me. Like, I'm not thinking
Right.
bad things. I'm just thinking, I don't know what to do. And he's feeling that or the energy of our own energy too, like intermixing with them and how important that role is. Like now that I am awake, now that I'm practicing through this lens of 5D and a spiritually awakened person who's also in Western medicine and has all my training here in occupational therapy,
Mm,
I'm seeing this unfolding when we're experiencing the spelling with AAC devices. We're just opening up the letter page,
yeah.
and we're letting them spell. And
Yeah.
then we're seeing all this stuff happen. And we're having staff say, I think they're reading my thoughts. And I was like,
Mm.
they are.
Oh,
They
they most
are.
definitely are.
So
They
it's
are.
so fascinating when you start to like finally be open to something different.
It is fascinating, and after you're open to it for a while, because now it's kind of just like another fact, like you say the sky is blue, most people with non-speaking autism are telepathic, and it just makes sense because they experience energy at such a high caliber, and thoughts are energy, and even though we're neurotypical, and I would say my third eye is, like, completely closed, but, like, it's like you can feel someone's energy, right? And so they're just feeling it, like, more deeply, like,
Yeah,
you know
it's that external sensation. I think that we have the extrasensory perception. All of us have the capacity for it. We just have numb to it and we're distracted and we can't hear. We don't feel the
Mhm,
way that we could if we were just present in our body and not being flooded with dopamine from everything else around us. So I think that you can walk into a room and you can tell if the energy's off, right? Like you
right,
can tell if someone was talking about you or if someone like
right.
is not in a good mood. You can feel that energy. And these children experience sensory input from an OT perspective. they experience sensory input on such a profound level. Like the lights are too bright, the sounds are too loud, the people touching me is too much. Like, and then they go into fight or flight. And that's where my role of regulating nervous systems comes in and doing sensory integration, and helping their body feel safe and regulated so that they
Right.
can communicate. But if they're already experiencing our normal five senses, we have proprioception, which is like your body in space, and interoception, how you sensate inside, like your thirst, hunger, bowel bladder. What about extrasensory perception beyond those senses?
Right.
And it's energetic and it's telepathic and it's different and we can't understand it. But you can't tell me like what someone internally feels like, and you can't say that's real or that's not real. How is
Right.
someone going to say that it's not real that a child is telepathic?
Oh, wow. You just made so many good points. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And for me, what my message is, because I've been getting these downloads for so long and I've been pushing them down for so long, I've only recently started coming out with it more bluntly.
Mhm.
Um, but I think as a whole, collectively, we have been taught to ignore what's on the inside so completely that we're not even aware of it anymore. I don't know how you were growing up, but it was you don't have emotions. You don't feel them. Like if you have them, zip them up.
Mhm.
And emotions are, I mean, it's part of being human. It's a real momentous energy. Think about when you're gonna cry, like actual literal water comes to your eyes, and then you stop that reaction. There's gonna be repercussions. So I almost feel like, I think they have so many roles. I think their souls chose this experience for so many different reasons, but one of those is to wake us up to feeling again.
Right.
They feel so extra, right?
They do. Yeah. And then having these families, I'm telling you, I am such a fan of the Telepathy Tapes podcast and soon to be documentary because I've given it to so many families since it came out. And I'm like, just listen to it, be open-minded, and let me know
Right,
what you think. And usually they binge it within a day or a week, whatever it is. They're just like, I couldn't get enough. And
right,
the biggest thing, makes me emotional to think about it, is I've had a dad come back and he goes, this podcast taught me to presume competence in my child who sometimes does not look like she knows what's happening around her, but
yeah,
this makes me know that she does. And he's been sending loving telepathic thoughts. And he's been like, it's just the most beautiful relationship ever. And why not? If it's giving somebody hope, if it's giving somebody connection with their child who they don't understand,
right,
who is anybody on the outside who's not living that life?
right.
Why does their opinion even matter? Right?
That's
You're not
right.
living this life. You don't know what it's like to
You
not
don't know.
understand your child. And,
Mhm,
seeing children who what you work with, and I want to know more about the motoric side and the apraxia side of how do you actually facilitate this communication?
mhm.
Because I work with kids who are very apraxic and they can't control their body. And I just got punched in the head and I reached out to you twice because I was trying to give a hug because deep pressure helps her.
Right,
And it was too much and she didn't want to. And she goes, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And I was like, and I tell her, you're safe. I know you can't control your body.
right,
It's okay.
right.
Well, how do you move through these things and how do you teach them so that other people can learn?
That's a loaded question. Um, because I actually have a kid that I'm working with right now. He's been my biggest teacher, my biggest teacher. He's so smart, so in tune, but his body will get overstimulated so quickly. Like, you know how people like come up to kids with autism, well intentioned, but they're like, "Hey, bud, how's it going?" Yeah, like
Mm,
that will take his body off. Um, I'm like honesty is the best policy. And number 1 is my regulation. So I have a solid regulation schedule so I can sufficiently serve my clients, especially the ones who call their unruly bodies. And I walk in there and I just state what I see. Like if he's extremely dysregulated, like, hey, I see you're dysregulated. I see you're jumping up and down. I see you need to pace. You're doing an awesome job pacing. Keep on pacing. We're going to get through this. And, so it's like constant talking and being on his team with like non-judgment because this kid has gotten so much shame and judgment from other people because his body is highly, highly aggressive.
mm,
I mean, he's punched me in the face a lot. um, um, But that also teaches me because as crazy as it sounds, and this is where it gets like deep and it's like, okay, she's psycho, but he was teaching me to assert myself and draw boundaries. And it's not that he wanted to do that, but I do feel like their bodies are here to like resonate with whatever is inside of you and pull it out so you can rise to the growth that you need to.
Oh,
So I found my way with him. I'm like, hey, I'm going to step back. You stay over there, energetic boundary, and keep on walking. And like, cause he paces to get the energy out. And he responds to that. He responds to that.
so do you set like an energetic boundary personally?
I say those words and I like kind of put my hands up. I'm like, hey, energetic boundary. I see that your body is escalated and I want to keep you safe and I want to keep me safe. And I know when they're in that high beta brainwave state that like they're very reflexive. So if you're in their field of vision and you're close enough, their body, they can't control those impulses, right? I don't want to say it this way, but it's like we are animals. And before our impulses were integrated, we were wild animals. So if he's feeling in his body so overwhelmed, very unsafe, if you're in his field of vision and you're close enough to him, his body will react and get you, you know? Um, but he's responded so well to me saying that and to me just talking those things out. Um, and I hate to keep talking just about him, but he is my teacher and he's so OCD, very, very OCD. And that's something that I'm kind of on the fence with in a few different ways. I think you have to really pay attention to the individual. But the OCDs that are very aggressive, I put a stop on them and I tell him when he stops them, like, I'm like, you've won. You're winning. This is a win. And then his body escalates, but then it comes down. Um,
How do you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that I think they're really calling us to like get in tune energetically and to listen to our intuition because my intuition tells me what to do every time.
Right. And I think that's what's so funny is because I don't really plan for my patients all the time. Like I will have their goals and all those kinds of things. But when I go and I always take the hardest kids, quote unquote,
Right,
hard kids,
right, quote unquote.
because I feel them so deeply. And I have like this one little boy that comes to mind that he's really aggressive and he actually did almost claw my eye out only because it was time to go. Only because it was time to go and he was not ready to go. And that's the moment that he did it.
Transitions are hard.
Transitions are so hard,
Hmm.
but I make myself small and I'll like get underneath them and I'll lay with them and I'm like, what do you need? And I will either send them the telepathic thought of what do you need? If
Hmm.
they're accepting for touch, I'll put my hands, like we talked about before, I put my
Yeah.
hands on my patient and he's got like CP kind of movements and he also has autism, nonverbal, not speaking and he has a really hard time with motor control and impulsivity and he'll hit but he's not angry he gets really excited sometimes but then he
Right.
has meltdowns and so I'll just put my hands on him and I send him reiki and I'm sending him love. I'm telling him telepathically and out loud that I love you, you're safe.
Yeah.
And I've found such transformation in my therapy when I'm sending love energy into the field
Yeah.
because they respond with such peace. Like they'll look at me and they are just like, oh, you are a safe person for me. And I was doing Reiki on a kiddo the other day and I was just beaming them like across the room. We're just sending, all the love. And they were playing separately with a different therapist and I was just supervising. And she ran into my lap and looked at me and said, love
Oh my
me. And
God.
I was
That's
like, and I had three witnesses in the room too. And I'm like,
chill.
this is something, right? Like, but
Absolutely.
I'm new to it. I'm new to the experiencing it for myself. I believe it wholeheartedly. I believed it the
Yeah.
second I listened to the podcast and learning about your page on TikTok,
Hmm.
which shout out to you. I want to make sure we share all your handles because I want people to follow you. But what was it like developing that first like moment from that first kiddo that you talked about and Houston and JP and your patient now? How have you evolved in how you do therapy or how you connect?
Hmm. That's a great question. Um, Well, how I've evolved is I've started paying a lot more attention to my energetic state. I started learning a lot more about emotions and the frequency they hold because all emotions vibrate at a different level, right? You can think about when you're super angry, what that feels like. You can think about sadness and what that feels like. And then, talking about how you were sending that love vibe, I think most of us, especially mainstream wise in society, we have never even experienced what that love feels like. And if you don't know what it feels like, you don't know what you're missing out on. And so it's this very high vibrational, spacious thing. And so 100% you sending that over to her and she felt it and she reciprocated and came back, like these things are real. I think, I can't remember which child said it on the telepathy tapes, but it was the episode where they spoke out and he said, like, we need to pay attention to emotional intelligence. Like, that's the key. Like, it needs to be in everything. And it's true because none of us realize, and I know you get this, like, from waking up, same here, how much we are living in contraction and suffering and apathy and whatever, all of the low emotions, which are actually scientifically calibrated by David Hawkins. So yeah, how I've evolved and connected is like, I gotta be high vibe or like it, it might not work, you know?
Mhm. Oh, yeah. I think the vibrational frequency that I come into therapy my stomach just dropped thinking about it. But that vibrational frequency is almost my superpower. And I taught my staff, we did a training here of regulation. Your own regulation is the medicine because you have to co-regulate with these kids.
Yeah.
And I mean, listen, I think all people should co-regulate with all people. Like,
Oh, yes,
right?
100%. I'm like, how did I live without this?
Yeah, not just non-speaking autistics. Like this is something that can apply to the general population and
Right.
your own children and your own life with your own family members. If you can like pause and regulate your body, and then when you send that regulation out into the field of just like, we are safe together, we are safe. And that's why I teach vagus nerve stimulation and reflex integration and just whole body healing because I'm a trauma survivor myself and I felt
Mhm.
so unsafe in my body. And it was a physical experience. And so
Yeah.
it's also a physical experience when you're healing and when you're healed. And when you have reclaimed that regulation, you embody a different frequency. And so I think it's just so exciting to be able to have this conversation with another practitioner in a different field almost, but similar,
Yeah.
and someone who's spiritually awakened being able to share in this dialogue because it's so hard. I think it's so hard to talk to other people about this who don't get it. They think I'm, like, are you crazy? Are you losing your mind? You're like, no, this is the sanest I've ever been. I'm
Yeah.
very highly educated. I have a master's in occupational therapy and I have a master's in trauma because I've gone through that my whole
You
life.
do? Wow. All right.
I
Yeah.
like
Like, oh, you do? What? Bachelor's? Yes.
informally master's in
Informally.
trauma because it's lit that's that life experience. And so I
Yeah.
know what it's like, but it's revolutionary to see more practitioners like coming online with this.
Coming online. Right. And it's amazing that everybody kinda is coming online, like, it's, like, around the world, everybody's having these waking up experiences around these types of people, and
Mhm.
it's because they are experiencing the world beyond the veil, right? They are, and so something in that is resonating in us, and they're not showing up with the conditioned social, societal expectation, do what meets the box's needs, right? Like they're showing up because they can't, right? They're showing up as people who can't control their motor systems. So it's
Right.
something very real. And I do want to speak to regulation a little bit, because I feel like let me know if you feel this way too. Like the more regulated I am, the more I can spiritually connect, the more I can feel my intuition, the more I can have telepathic communication, right?
100% agree.
Right. And
100% agree.
yeah, I would agree that it's very hard to talk about these things.
Yeah, and so that kind of takes me to my next question is merging our worlds, right? Merging our professional side and our degrees and all of our science backgrounds with what people might consider woo woo or, oh, that's too fringe or I'm a skeptic. I don't believe that. And then you have actual societal structures and
Hmm.
systems, such as like big organizations such as ASHA, who weren't recognizing the
Right.
American Speech and Hearing Association, who were not recognizing lettering or spelling as an effective way of communicating and would dissuade people from doing it in schools, and therapists were afraid of doing it. So
Hmm.
knowing what you know now, and I know you're not a speech language pathologist, but you're still in this field of working with children who are learning how to communicate, and lettering is helping, and giving them a voice and they're not trapped in their body anymore.
Correct.
Knowing what you know, what would you say to institutions or power structures that don't recognize this as a total communication and as a pathway for communication.
Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna look at I had written an answer down to this a while back, and so I didn't even read it just now, so you can edit at your leisure. Let's see what it says. So, I'd say look at why do you believe nonverbal means non-thinking? Like, why do you believe that?
I have that written down as a question. Why do people think nonverbal means non-thinking? Girl, we are so in line.
Gosh, we are so in alignment. Oh gosh, I love
Tell me
it.
what you wrote.
Okay, let's see. People who are mute or selective mute still think. Duct tape your mouth. Are you still able to think?
Mhm.
Autism affects the motor. You use motor skills for nearly every second of your life. Eating, speaking, sleeping. For neurotypicals, it's integrated and easily purposeful. And we have access to those pathways. They do not. So, does that mean that they're non thinking? Because I guess with the Asha piece, they come from a point of view as like they're not thinking, right? I don't know. I feel like they come from a point of view where it's like, let's start at the very lowest. Like we're training like 12-year-olds on simple objects. Like, why would we do that? Like, why do you think their comprehension is affected because their body doesn't work? It's kind of like saying like someone who's deaf, I don't know, like can't see. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was reading Houston and Katie's book, The Book of Heaven, and in one of the parts it was talking about how, like in ABA, how frustrating it is that they're only given a certain amount of selections for their, the core board or for their, what they can use to talk, and pointing at pictures, PECs, picture exchange communication.
Right.
And he's like, I'm a genius. Why do I only have five selections? And it's kind of annoying and frustrating to feel like your voice is not
It's so limited.
heard.
It's like, "Here, choose one of these things, and I want you to choose, be obedient." And I don't wanna shame all of it because I do believe in so many
Has a
ways.
purpose.
It could have a purpose, it could be great for some people's lives.
Absolutely.
But hearing Houston's stories and so many other people's stories, it was super, degrading and just
It's
frustrating.
frustrating. Jinx, frustrating because if you and I, let's just say that we had a major surgery where our mouth was having to be wired shut, right? Like, my dad actually like broke his jaw at one point in time and his mouth was wired shut and he had to drink through a straw. Um, and at that point he couldn't talk. But did that take away his capacity to think? Did that take away his capacity to communicate?
Right,
Verbally, verbally. And
right.
another thing that circling back to this is my dad is a total laryngectomy cancer survivor, 5 years now. He's cancer free. He just got his like certificate from MD Anderson here in Houston, of being cancer free. And he didn't have a voice for a period of time. He had no voice. He does talk out of a TEP now, and his voice is so beautiful. But he had
Mhm.
no voice, and all he had was the board that you press the button and it erases. And
Yeah.
the level of frustration that I saw my dad, who I love very deeply, at 58 years old have
Wow.
was so sad. It was so sad to see someone lose their voice, and it was the hardest thing because that was the guy I talked to all the time. And he
Right,
has so much to say, but all of a sudden he physically couldn't. And so everything got short. Everything was shorthand. He was just like scratching and he was angry. And like, what must that feel like inside to be trapped in your body and your body's not cooperating with you for whatever reason, cancer or autism or anything in between?
right.
And you have so much to say. And this is just showing people a different way of communicating and honoring autonomy.
Honoring autonomy. Yes. Yes, it's opening our minds so much. I would also say to them, go, there's enough spellers out there who are willing to educate you. I would say go meet a fluent speller and ask them questions and watch them spell back to you and then decide if it's evidence based or not, right? I went through when I first started doing this because I was blown away and I thought it was amazing. I went through a lot of friends really calling me crazy, like, "Oh, that's not evidence-based. I can't believe you're actually doing that. Are you really going to Texas to learn that?" And it's just like, I was like, "How can," like, when I looked at it, I knew it was real. So that's something else that I also like, I'm like, whoa, we must have completely different perceptions because when I watch this, it's obvious to me that they're spelling and they're grounded in their body way more than they ever are typically. But they watch it and don't see that, you know?
I just don't know how we as a society have any place to say that someone is communicating or they're not.
Yeah.
And like that's just so it seems so appalling.
Suspicious and no.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like how entitled and ableist of you to think that because it's not the way that you communicate or that is traditionally communication, that
Right.
you are not valid in how you're communicating. You know, I think it just blows my mind that this is kind of the argument that we have is, oh, well, this is a conspiracy or this can be debunked. Like one of your videos on TikTok of how there's a page going around trying to debunk the telepathy tapes. And there's these families and they're wearing
God, it's
like,
insane. Like the argument they put up
yeah.
was like so insane. I was like, what? But oh gosh.
And they're wearing like blindfolds, like double blindfolds, triple blindfolds, and these kids are getting all of the colors of things, the letters and numbers and mathematic problems, all these crazy things that you're like, there's no other way to explain this.
Oh my gosh, there's no question, you guys. There's no question. Like I remember I played jokes with like Houston and one of my other friends and at Recliff. They would just be doing like an open answer and I would just think of like a random silly word like poop or like butt or something. And then they would type it. And they're like, they look at me like, really? Come on. And be like, okay, I just wanted to like, spice things up. So it's so real. Like I have no reason to lie. It's so real. Yeah.
Do
Just
you ever feel like you hear their thoughts?
okay, that's a good question. So there's definitely I don't know if I've had an experience like you where like I feel like you like definitely heard it, you knew it.
Mhm.
I'll be spelling with someone and I try to keep my focus on prompting their body and while they're spelling like a word will come into my head like that I wouldn't have thought of or phrase that would come into my head. So I'm like, okay, I must be hearing their thoughts, picking up on their thoughts. And so that's happened like quite a few times. And one of my clients within the last year, he told me, hey, don't doubt that you hear my thoughts too.
That's
So he just said that. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I do just hear their thoughts and I don't know. Like I can't discern because you're like in the same field, you know? Um,
and I do you so I want to talk to you a little bit about spirituality in just a second because I want to close out the spelling part. But do you feel like do you experience channeling or do you experience telepathic connection with source or your higher self in the way that I do with my TikTok and I share channel messages and those types of things? Do you hear as well, or are you more you see, you feel, like how do you feel like your clairs or your gifts have manifested?
I feel like I'm very clairsentient and what is it? The one with the intuition,
Cognizance.
or cognizance. And I've always been this way. I've always been this way. And yes, I will wake. You woke up to I need to interview Eileen and Katie, right? Like that was your God, your channel coming through. Yeah, before I even would have acknowledged this type of thing on multiple occasions, I wake up in the middle of the night with this huge, like on my knees feeling of like grace, love, but also just like so big that like my heart was bursting open and I'd be crying my eyes out, just talking into a recorder.
Hmm.
I'll share one of those channels because I feel like it's very helpful. And this happened way back in 2021, and I didn't share it for a very long time. Um, when I first found out that these guys were intellectually capable, but they were in a body essentially that they couldn't control, I took it super hard. I had this one client who he was my first spelling client actually. I love this kid. I would have adopted this kid. I like freaking loved this kid. Like you don't understand. My coworkers were like, Why do you love this kid so much?" I'm like, I don't know. It must have been like a soul connection. Who knows? Um, but hated, and I was angry. I was, like, angry with God, like, "Why would you do this to this precious child? Like, why?" Um, Hated it. I cried. Anyways, I just have to like, it was so much, I just feel like I have to reiterate that and, like, thinking about what the parents go through when they learn this, but so I woke up with a message that and I knew it in every fiber of my being, and it's what has totally shifted me and allowed me to breathe, is that their souls are expansive enough to handle their experience. completely expansive enough to handle their experience. They're chosen for this. They have everything they need. Yes, their job is hard and challenging. Everybody's job as a human is hard and challenging, but they can handle it, and so can the parents. And we've been conditioned into victim stories, which, don't get me wrong, a lot of these parents are victims of a lot of different things,
Mhm.
but we've been conditioned into feeding our victim story. And knowing that you're expansive enough, I hope that that can shift you in the direction of feeding your empowerment story. And that might not make sense to you now if you're listening to this, but maybe it will in the future. So I just wanted to say that.
That's so beautiful. I love that so much. And I think it, for me, I'm immediately getting called to like episode 10 with all of the non speakers when they're using their device or their spellers, their spelling
Mhm.
board, and they're communicating and they're telling the world what they need. What does my body need? I want tuning forks. I want energy healing. I want Reiki. I want, I really want to move my body and know how to move my body because I don't know how to
Right.
control it. Right. And so they're relying on us. But then at
Mhm.
the same time, it's such a deeply spiritual episode
Mhm.
because they talk about being light workers. They
Mhm.
talk about how they came here to change the paradigm. They came here to say, this is God's love, whatever you want to call it, God source, universal love that just exists within all people. And
Mhm.
and they're not afraid and they're so honest. Like if you've ever
Mhm.
met a person that's autistic, you know that they just beam and exude honesty. And sometimes it's so blunt that society gets their feelings hurt.
That's right.
But
Mhm.
they have no reason to lie. And, hearing someone that is autistic who experiences telepathy, who goes to the hill, who has connections across the world with people they've never physically met, but they've met and they know and they love, and they're
Right.
artistic and they're creative and they're so full of so much unlimited, untapped potential.
Mhm.
And they might not look like it, but until society decides that they're worth believing and they're worth investing in and they're worth trying something new. Like me, I started doing tuning forks and I'm getting sound healing certifications because
Mhm.
that is working. And I put these tuning forks on these kids and they go,
Oh my gosh, you've got to teach me about that.
they take a
I've
deep
got
breath
to get in that. Yeah,
and they get
to get in
still.
that certification course.
They get still. And it's just the coolest experience ever to just be in a space to listen versus
Right.
saying, I know it all because I have my degrees or I know it all because I have my experience. I'm not
Right.
autistic. I don't.
That's right. Right.
So it's just such a beautiful experience to get to know you more and to get to know other, non-speakers who still have a voice and they're just not yet using their voice, but they're
Mhm.
using it in a different way to communicate. And I'm just so excited for what the future holds for these families, for these kids when they become adults. And I just think that you and I and others like us are on this like cutting edge of
Mhm.
of really leaning in and having a huge breakthrough if we just decide that it's worth believing. That's just all we have to do is have faith in something that's bigger than us.
Right. Yeah, you said it all. You said it all. And this is big. And we are on the very beginning of this wave. We are. And I'm so happy we're here because I've been knowing this truth since 2018 and I didn't speak about it because of fear and lack of courage. And I feel like that made my body like very sick and very tired and very depressed. And I'm so happy to be sitting here with you right now speaking literal truth and feeling the energy rise because of it. And it's like, whatever,
So
if
cool.
you're not on board yet, that's okay. But yeah, because it's not something we're pushing on people. It,
Yeah.
but truth will prevail. It will come out,
And truth will set you free.
and truth will
And
set you free.
you touched on it a little bit, but just to expand on it, is that you said I got woken up in the middle of the night by God telling me to interview you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened as I went to sleep, I prayed that my higher self and God would give me like, how do I take the next step? Because I've been wanting to do Light Beyond the Ashes podcast for a long time. I've got my Light Beyond the Ashes Instagram and TikTok, and I've
Yeah.
had to push through a lot of fear. And I call it walking through fear doors. This is a huge fear door for me, is to do this today.
Yeah.
Um, and God woke me up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I wrote it down. I sent you a picture and I said, hey, I was told that I'm going to interview you and Houston and Katie Asher, and that we're going to do a podcast and we're going to talk about spelling and lettering, letterboarding, and making sure that we can share this knowledge with the world and merging my world finally of doing spirituality and occupational therapy and healing all together into one. and that I wouldn't be afraid. And you just make me feel so safe to talk about this stuff. And um, my heart was racing before we started, and my heart feels calm now because I'm with you. And like the energy is so pure. And I know that you've gone through a lot of things that I probably have gone through too when you're going through an awakening. And it's one of those, if you know, you know.
Yeah.
And, if you don't yet know, maybe you will in the future if you're open to it. But it's so much peace. There's so much peace in just being open and healing and feeling and knowing that you're an ever evolving and ever expanding soul that
Mhm.
can grow, has the capacity to grow and to know more and to learn more. But really, it's embodiment. We're going to embody this
Yeah.
knowingness and we're not going to be afraid anymore. And so I'm hoping that families or people who hear this podcast don't feel afraid of the diagnosis of autism. Don't
Yeah.
feel afraid of my child is not yet speaking or may never speak. How do I communicate? How do I know what their needs are?
Right.
Like there's so much fear in not knowing what your child needs.
Yes,
Uh,
absolutely.
and so
Yeah.
I think that you're such an asset to our communities. Every person who's helping, autistic kids and
Right.
families is such an asset because you're unlocking hidden potential that's just waiting to explode. And there's so much that our world needs to listen to neurodivergent people. I'm
Yeah.
neurodivergent myself. Like I have ADHD and I'm sensory
Mhm.
processing and I struggle.
Yeah.
And it's been so nice to feel safe with people like you to be able
Yeah.
to talk about topics like this. So thank you so much for everything so far.
Oh, likewise. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, how can other families with non speakers access learning for letterboarding or spelling for their own children? What do they need to know to help unlock the hidden potentials for their kiddos?
Okay. So So it's not something that you need to go get a degree for. There are certification programs. One of them is through Rapid Prompting Method, and I believe the website is like halo.com or something like that. It's Soma Motokupadia. I learned how to say her last name. Yeah, she's a genius. So she's the one who actually brought this idea into the world of they're intellectually there, but they need help with their motor system. Okay, so that's one way, RPM. Another way that I know of is spelling to communicate, which is S2C. And the person who leads that is Elizabeth Fossler. And like I said, both of those organizations don't acknowledge telepathy, um, but definitely a place to start, right? And I would say the best way to learn is if you can find someone in your area who's doing the method. Um, if you can ask them, "Hey, can I come over and shadow? Can I watch? Is there anything you can share with me?" Because really, when you're gonna learn, it's like hands on.
Hmm.
I do offer a course which would be a more price like what am I trying to say here? Like easier on the price, I guess, and the time, right? For just beginning and letterboard. What do you have to do to just get started if you guys want to check that out? But those are a few different ways that you can go there. But always presume competence. Like always start with that. And what I mean by that is don't take what their body is doing and put some meaning on it and assume that they are as smart as their biological age. So if they're 6 years old, 6 year olds, they know what a 6-year-old would know, and yeah, so on and so forth.
So, if I wanted to, learn from you, how would I go about doing that? Where would I go?
Okay, so I do have a link tree, which it's on my Instagram, but it's for some reason I haven't figured out how to get it on my TikTok. So maybe my email is enphaseintune@gmail.com. So if you want to reach out to me that way or through DMing me on TikTok, I'm usually there. I can send you that link tree. I have a few courses, presuming competence, and intro to letterboard, as well as I have like a freebie for emotional freedom technique. Yeah, thing. Yeah. So it's like a freebie of like 4 different tappings, I think, for parents. Yeah.
Oh, I do that here. I do that with
Oh,
athletics too. Yeah. What is your Instagram handle and what is your TikTok handle? Are they the same as your email?
I don't even know my hand.
I think it's Get in Tune with Autism on TikTok.
Okay, so TikTok, yes. TikTok, it's autism.get.in. in tune.
Okay.
I think.
So is your Instagram the same? If not, I can add it in.
I think it is. How about you just add it on the show
I'll
notes?
add it on the show. So I want to
I
make
really
sure
need to
people
learn
can
my
find you.
handles.
I want to make sure that people can find you because I think
Okay.
you're a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of expertise and also a safe place to land. And so I think families would feel really comfortable talking to you about this issue and this topic. But I'm so excited that we got to meet and talk about this. If do you have a final message for anyone listening, any families um, that might not know where to go next or they're just feeling scared?
Okay, my final message would be we've all been conditioned with fear. And if you're a non speaking or non reliably speaking autism parent, you definitely have been conditioned with fear. And you've probably been conditioned with the undertones of like, you're a burden, nobody cares about you or your child, and you have to hurry up and get things done. And you probably have all those feelings somewhere underneath. I want to say that those things aren't true. And I want to say that your child has a very special role, even if you don't think they do. They are changing lives by just holding the frequency that they're holding because they're bringing all of us to a vibration that most of us haven't felt before. So even if it doesn't feel like it fits into society, society isn't end all be all. And your role is so powerful and so important. Yeah.
So beautiful. That's so beautiful, Eileen. And one last thing. What is your advice or a sentiment for someone who is maybe first this episode is the first time they've ever heard of a spiritual awakening, they've ever heard of channeling or telepathy. Like, what advice would you have for your younger self that's going through a spiritual awakening or interested in learning about that?
Okay, that's a good question. Um, let go of resistance and look inside. Don't look outside, look inside. Feel your emotions, meditate.
Yes.
Meditate and you'll start hearing God's voice. So tune out all the other voices and tune inside.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much, Eileen. I'm very excited
This
that
is
you said
so
yes.
good.
I'm so excited.
I feel so honored to be here and to like be in your presence. Yes.
Thank you. I feel honored to get to know you more and that TikTok brought us together and having soul sister relationship.
TikTok.
I know TikTok's reuniting all of us together. We've just waited for each other. But
That's
thank you so much for everybody listening. I hope you learned a lot today about telepathic communication. You learned about letterboarding and spelling, sorry, and that total communication means total communication.
that's
So
right.
until next time, this is Light Beyond the Ashes. We'll see you around the corner.
Bye.